Good evening, thank you for your attendance. We'll open the Standards Committee. Everybody happy with that, right? Have we got any apologies for absence, substitutes? I think we're all right with that.
No, I think we're all here.
Yeah. Meeting is approved with the correct record of the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of
26th of June.
26th of June. Everybody happy with that?
And you're going to move those, Chair?
I move those.
Got a seconder.
And seconder.
Those in favour.
Everybody in favour of the minute?
Any
Majority.
abstentions?
No abstentions.
There's 3 new members here. Okay. Any declarations?
Yeah, has anybody got any declaration of interest on the agenda? Oh, right. What's this gives?
No, it's this one. Code of conduct.
Yeah, we'd like to look into the Code of Conduct review, a report of the Deputy Chief Executive and the Monitoring Officer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Council are required by legislation to have a code of conduct governing the standards of behaviour expected by councillors and parish councillors within the borough. This council adopted its most recent code of conduct in January 2024, and that code of conduct largely aligns with the Local Government Association Model Code of Conduct. That adoption in 2024 followed quite an extensive review of the code by this committee and a public consultation as we were moving away from the old Gedling code to the model code. As part of the Committee on Standards in Public Life report, which recommended the Local Government Association Model Code, there were further recommendations around best practice, which this council adopted in July 2019. One of the recommendations was that the council should review its code of conduct annually, and in undertaking that review, that they should engage with local stakeholders. In December 2024, the government launched a consultation on changes to the standards regime. The consultation ran until the 26th of February 2025. At the current time, the feedback is being considered and there has been no proposed changes published in relation to the standard regime. Paragraph 1.3 of the report sets out kind of the key highlights of that consultation. But in relation to the code of conduct, one of the proposals was that there was an introduction of a mandatory minimum code of conduct for all local authorities across England. There were various other recommendations made around sanctions imposed following findings of code of conduct breach and mechanisms of appeal for members who have been found in breach. The timescales for feedback on that consultation are not clear, but certainly earlier around the December time, it was very much government's intention that these changes would come around fairly quickly. With that in mind, and given that we have undertaken to review our code of conduct annually, my recommendation to this council is that we pause the review of the code of conduct in 25-26, pending the outcome of the government consultation. If there is no outcome of the consultation within that year period, then we will undertake a review of the code of conduct early in 26 and 27. As I've set out in the report, the code of conduct seems to be working well. We have the new model code. We haven't had it for a huge amount of time. We've had it for over a year. In terms of the way complaints are coming through and how they're being handled, it remains fit for purpose from a monitoring officer perspective. So there's no changes that I would be recommending at this point in time anyway in terms of that model code. But as I say, my other concern is that is it the best use of resources to undertake a public consultation on a review of the code and then at any point of time, it could be quite imminent, there are changes to that regime which require us to adopt a mandated code in any event. So the recommendation around that is that we postpone the review of the Code of Conduct until 26-27 or until the government announced changes to the legislation. There is another ask in the report as well. So just reflecting about, I suppose, what's been happening with some of the Code of Conduct queries and complaints that have been coming into me, and also something that we've undertaken with staff in the council as well. We've recently updated our social media guidelines for staff in terms of how they should be using it, what might be acceptable in a work context, what's not. I think given the nature of the complaints, and this isn't just the case at Gedling, this is happening across the country, the majority of complaints now seem to be coming out of social media usage. I think it would be helpful for this council, or for myself with the support of this committee, to create a guideline document for members, just in terms of where social media might be caught by the code and where it's not. So there is some guidance in the LGA guidance around specifically linked to the code, so what might be disrespect and so forth. But I think it's important that members have a wider understanding of that in terms of, so when are you caught by the code? So when is that social media post as a councillor? When is it as a when is it a member of the public? And just some of the ways and examples of where social media has been found in other, not in Gedling, but in other cases, in other instances to have breached the code. The recommendation in the report is that guidance is developed and that I bring it back to this committee. I would also, given the way that we usually operate within this committee, what I should have added and would like to propose in addition to that is that we establish a working group from this committee so we can draft the social media guidance and then review that with members of this committee through a working group and then bring it back to this committee for further consideration. Thank you.
Is everybody in favour of that, having the working group?
Does anyone like to comment on the report first?
Does anybody like to comment on the anything you want to clarify?
Councillor Brockle.
Yeah, I
think Councillor Brockle.
Yeah, Councillor Brown, yeah.
First, that's fine.
It's getting a bit confusing.
That's good. I did have 3 questions, but one of them was about setting up a working group, so I'll leave that one. The first one was just to say that obviously happy with the recommendation. It seems like completely logical and common sense with the approach on both saving the review and also going for the social media guidelines. I suppose it was just, so the first question was, we know that there's sort of the legal implications are minimal because it's not a legal requirement to have like the review, it's just like an internal policy, but it's just, are there any other potential risks, I suppose, from not doing the review this year? I can't think of any, so it's not a trick question, it's just, are there any? And then the second one is, because as we know, this is not just an issue that's around Gedling or parishes in this area, we're looking to try and link in with other local authorities, especially our neighbouring ones, to see what guidelines they have. If they've not, try and link in and share best practice as part of that review.
I'll put my microphone on and actually answer your question. So yes, in terms of linking up with other local authorities, absolutely. So we do have a monitoring officers group. I am aware that other authorities are looking at, excuse me, social media guidance as well. So absolutely, it would be nonsense to not look at what other people are doing and try and combine that. Working group we've dealt with, and your other question was around the best practice recommendation. So it's a best practice recommendation, and as I say, we've agreed as a committee that we will follow those best practice recommendations. But what I'm saying is, from my point of view, whilst that's best practice, what I'm also concerned about is, as I say, deploying resource and time on a consultation and also confusing potentially parishes and the public on a code of conduct review, and then in a short time later, we're going out again on a potentially a very different regime. So it is that we have accepted that as best practice, but it's my view that it would be illogical
yeah, that's
to do it right now. But as I say, that's not to say we will not review our code. And as I say, if we don't have any change, then we will pick that up at the start of the 26-27 year.
Magic. Thank you.
I think Councillor Adams.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Just a couple of things. The online, the papers that are online don't have that further recommendation in them. I don't know why that is. You just dropped that in there.
I've just explained that. Yeah, it
So you
wasn't in the report. It's
sorry,
an
I didn't realise you'd.
Yeah,
right,
sorry,
fine.
it's an additional
It's all right.
recommendation if members are content with that.
Yeah, I suppose I feel quite wary about the social media aspect of it because I feel like that's sort of where, I suppose it's how you would do that if you were acting in an official account capacity. So if you were logged in as cabinet member for whatever, and then you were speaking, yeah, I get that. That would be where there's a code issue, I suppose, or where potentially there would be. I suppose the only concern I have with that is that when you're acting outside and away from here on your social media, that is effectively within your own time, and you aren't necessarily acting as a council at that time. And I think as long as we understand the framework is quite clear on that it's not there isn't any invading on that ability for free speech out in social media terms. And maybe it acts as an example of situations maybe where other councils have shown a conduct issue. I would be in support of a working group for that, but not under the circumstances when the council's setting the what's the word I'm looking for? Setting the actual what's right and wrong in terms of social media. I suppose that's, so how would you create that?
And I think, well, to your first point, in terms of when you're acting in capacity, it's not always when you are just talking, when you are on your councillor page. If you were on a public page with your private name, no councillor reference, but you are talking about council business, you could still be caught by the Code of Conduct because it's where you are or you appear to be acting as a councillor. So just to that point. But this is in no way, and nor does the code, an attempt to squash freedom of expression as an individual or as a councillor. Absolutely not. The guidance it's points like that. It's points like that one to be very clear when you might be caught and when you won't be caught. And it's not to dictate what you put on social media, not by any stretch of the imagination. It's just to, I suppose, perhaps provide some clarity for members, because there's lots of different settings, both private and councillor capacity settings, where members are posting things which is absolutely within their gift, but it's just been very clear. So to protect councillors so they don't get caught in a position where they thought they were, perfectly, expressing their views privately, and then they get caught by the code. So, and it's not a thou shalt document, it's a guidance document. It's just kind of think about these things, you might want to think about these things. Because as well, under the Code of Conduct, say, using the example of disrespect, for example, so if we were saying that a social media post crossed that threshold into disrespect, a councillor's post, that's quite a high threshold, because you're absolutely right, councillors have the right to express their opinions, and actually the threshold for councillors is slightly higher in some instances, because particularly in that political forum, you're entitled to robustly express your views. And this is not an attempt to quell that at all. It's just providing, I suppose, that just a bit of guidance and support for you, particularly for those people, I suppose, who aren't as used to social media, so who might not be as savvy or au fait with when they're caught and when they're not caught. Because some councillors, some individuals use social media all the time, some less so, and it's just making sure that everybody, I suppose, understands its potential reach and risks. That's all that is. It's certainly not to stop social media use. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's really, you don't want to bring the council in disrepute, and you may have certain knowledge, but you don't have to say that as the councillor. You can say that as an individual. It would reflect back. So it's how open the whole thing is for scrutiny. Everybody's happy with the working group. We've had a vote on it.
Do you want to propose those recommendations with the working group added?
All right. Is everybody clear about the recommendations? Everybody got a copy? First one, this one here.
Yeah.
Members note the current position of the government consultation on the standards regime and agree to a review of the Gedling Borough Council Code of Conduct in 2026 and 27, however, when required, following an update from the government, whichever sooner. Members support the development of social media guidelines for the council, support the Code of Conduct. And number 4, agree cross-party working group. We've already agreed that. So everybody's in favour of those issues. Seconder, please. Thank you.
And a vote now.
And everybody, I thought we had a vote, but everybody's quite in favour of that. Thank you. Declare Code of Conduct Review report to the Deputy Chief Executive Monitoring Officer. Is that put on item 4?
Item 5, Chair. Update of Code of Conduct.
updated Code of Conduct, a report of the Deputy Chief Executive and Monitoring Officer. Right.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the report that we present to every committee, just updating on the number of Code of Conduct complaints that have come through and the progress on those. So since the last time this committee met on the 26th of June, the Monitoring Officer has received one new Code of Conduct complaint. However, since publishing this agenda, there has been two more Code of Conduct complaints received, but they were received after these numbers were published, so they aren't part of the appendix with the updated complaints. One of those is from in relation to a parish, and one of them is a Gedling Borough Council councillor. So those two have both been received since publication. As also set out, there were two potential complaints that came in. So these are sometimes just queries that come in or questions that come in about whether or not this is a code complaint, and I will consider those and then make a decision before it even gets lodged because it's not a valid complaint. You may recall at the June committee that there were 5 Code of Conduct complaints outstanding. Of those 5, 3 have now concluded, and the information is published as part of the exempt report for committee members to consider. 2 of those complaints have been closed as after their assessment they were not ultimately deemed to be valid Code of Conduct complaints. So they were originally logged. There was quite a lot of back and forth with the complainants, but ultimately they weren't pursued. So I was saying to the chair at the pre-meeting, I was delighted that I only had one outstanding Code of Conduct complaint to report to committee, but I now have 2 more. But still, if members want to discuss in detail any of the exempt items, then obviously we would need to move into the closed session to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Is there any item, the Chair, item 6 now? Yeah. I've got nothing to raise on the issue before me. So I'd like to call the meeting to a close.